Hi guys, welcome back. When I first requested reasonable accommodation, I expected my boss to be supportive. After all, we'd had a really good working relationship for almost a decade. So her reaction, hostility, accusations, and threats really blindsided me. In hindsight, I recognized that I made some mistakes that hurt my chances with her. And talking with others about their requests and how they went has taught me even more mistakes. So today I want to talk about 5 common mistakes that we make when we request reasonable accommodation. So maybe you can avoid them. Mistake 1 is approaching it as a confrontation. Some of us go into it with an aggressive approach. We tell our employer exactly what we want and threaten legal action if they don't give it to us. And that approach rarely works. While the law does protect our right to reasonable accommodation, our employer doesn't have to give us everything we ask for verbatim. Deciding what's reasonable is an interactive process, so it's better to approach it as a team effort. Be clear about what you need, but also be open to alternatives. And just in case it doesn't go well, document all your requests and everything your employer does in response. Cooperation, along with keeping solid records, is a much better approach than demands and threats. Mistake 2 is waiting too long to request. I waited nearly 2 years after I started having problems at work to request my reasonable accommodations. HR had told me that until I had a diagnosis, I really couldn't request them because they'd have no way of knowing that I was disabled. Turns out they were wrong. The law defines disability in terms of our limitations, not labels. And I knew what my limitations were from the very start, so I could have asked my doctor to document them and requested reasonable accommodation right away. Delaying only strained my relationship with my boss, which made my process much harder in the end. Now, of course, the only caveat I have here is that before you request them, be sure that you need them, because this process can go south. Mistake 3 is relying on verbals. I didn't document that first meeting with my boss where I requested reasonable accommodation, the one that went completely haywire. Now, when I had to go to my second-tier supervisor to complain, that I did document. But because I had no documentation from the first meeting, that was fruitless. Following up important verbal exchanges with an email is a simple way of documenting what's happening and protecting ourselves. Mistake 4 is not being specific. In our request, it's important to explain how our specific limitations affect our ability to do our job or function in our workplace. 2 different people with the same disability may need very different accommodations, depending on what the essential duties of their job are and the environment they work in. I had IBS, which affected my bathroom habits. And because my job could be done pretty much entirely remotely, EEOC decided that for me, telework would have been a reasonable accommodation. But if I'd had a job that was more hands-on, probably not. Supporting our requests with elements from our job description and doctor's notes can make it much harder for our employer to justify making blanket rejections of our request. The law says they have to look at specifics, and if they don't, it's a problem. Document it. Mistake number 5 is overlooking interim accommodations. My boss delayed taking action on my reasonable accommodation request for 75 days. At my hearing, my boss testified that it wouldn't have been an undue hardship for her to provide me with interim accommodations from the very beginning, but she chose not to. My judge found that her decision caused me unnecessary harm, and he bumped my award as a result. Employers are supposed to offer us interim accommodations when delaying could cause us additional harm. Unless doing so would create an undue hardship for them. Now, I didn't ask for interim accommodations because I didn't know they were a thing. But now that I know, if I had a do-over, I'd go ahead and request them up front, in writing. I urgently need reasonable accommodations, so I'm requesting interim accommodations while we work through the process. If they ignore you or refuse, document that too. Requesting reasonable accommodation can be scary because we all know that some employers don't respond well to it. Our best hope of getting the accommodations we need is to be proactive, open to compromise, and to clearly lay out our limitations and our needs. If your needs are urgent or if the process starts dragging out too long, ask for interim accommodations. And document everything that happens, from the time you request accommodations until they're in place and working, just in case you need it later. So good luck, guys. I'll see you next time. Till then, take care and hang in.